Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
And good morning. Welcome to Wake Up Mid-Missouri as the New Hampshire primary is rolling out this morning as we talk, and we have sound from the first votes to be cast, the first primary votes in this exciting election season. Stephanie Bell's there, all excited. I know you're jazzed about it.
I love a primary day.
Hannah, she's so energized. It's great.
Yeah, nerd alert.
And John, are you as excited as Stephanie? I mean, you can feel the electricity in the room.
There's no one on the planet as excited as Stephanie for primary days.
Here's Mark Meredith talking about the first votes cast in this 24 GOP primary race.
There was one polling place, one small part of the Granite State up in Dixville Notch that opened overnight, allowing the 6 residents there to cast their ballot. Fox was there as those 6 voters in Dixville Notch cast their ballot just after midnight, like 12:01:30. They were out there ready to go. The town, which is about 20 miles from the Canadian border, has been doing this ever since 1960. Haley swept this small town, winning the support of all 6 voters. Overnight, though, the attention was on the GOP frontrunner, former President Trump. He held a massive rally urging New Hampshire Republicans to see him as someone who could bring the party together.
Well, I guess it's Nikki's either first stand or last stand. We'll see as the day progresses. People are saying she needs to at least come within single digits. I mean, maybe those independents can come and vote for her. Who knows? But she's got to have a good showing, doesn't she?
She does. And I'm not surprised that these first 6 votes rolled in for her. I'm going to try to look up who did this place vote for last time.
I think Trump got it, didn't he?
Are you talking about Dixville Notch?
Yeah. Did they vote Trump last time?
As far as I remember, they did. It's an interesting town. They voted just after midnight, but I mean, it's so small. I don't know how I mean, it's more fascinating than anything else. I just don't know how representative that is of the whole state.
It's great tradition, though. It's like Punxsutawney Phil on Groundhog Day, you know.
In New Hampshire, to me, is a Republican state. It's conservative, but it's got a little bit of a. There's just things about it that are, they've elected some Democrats over the years too.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. There's
and
Brian
Haley
Hauswirth
has the endorsement of the governor. Kristen Sununu, and she has the aid of independents voting, so she could have a big night, although the polling isn't really showing that she should have a big night.
And on other news, the economy, well, at least if you're looking at the markets, continue to go up. I know Stephanie will be covering that later in the morning bell. Chris Arps will join us at 6:35, and boy, we're going to have a rock'em sock'em time with Cindy O'Loughlin, or at least have her take on the rock'em sock'em goings on in the Senate. She'll be with us at 7:35. So Majority Leader O'Loughlin will be with us then. You won't want to miss that. And
she's got a lot of districts in her school districts, and her senatorial district closed again today. So she's been dealing with a little bit of that. Northeast Missouri was essentially shut down with the ice storm. They're still getting it right now.
And I have to tell you, I parked out on the lot today, which yesterday was an absolute glazed over sheet of ice.
Yep.
I parked out and almost fell coming in because there are still little that's the thing. There's little secret patches of ice that you may not think. You may think it's melted because it's 38 degrees out.
Well, and our parking lot is special in the fact that it's on just enough of an incline to cause issues when it's icy.
And it's difficult to get in some of those spots, but you're absolutely right. It's not just the rural towns, but Columbia and Jefferson City are having issues as well. So most school districts in the listening area, KWS and 93.9 The Eagle, have closed for today. The 2 large, Southern Boone and Ashland, is closed today. The Columbia Public Schools, Jeff City, are on the 2-hour delayed start, and it's because of this ice that you just referenced. I've had a heck of a time getting down the stairs at my apartment. I had to walk like a penguin.
This morning?
This morning.
Oh.
There's ice everywhere,
Oh.
and it was this morning. So be very, very careful.
And the fog is pretty bad, too. So there's a fog alert out as well. So
foggy,
be careful.
boy.
How is it in Jeff City this morning?
Back roads, here and there, a little bit icy, and like you said, some patchy fog and all. Main highways in good shape all over most of mid-Missouri. But watch it on the back streets, gravel roads especially.
And sidewalks.
We also have an update on Missouri politics and polling and how the races are going. I know, Stephanie, you've been unpacking that. There's some interesting trends there.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to note, the polling that we got out over the weekend on the statewide races shows more than 50% of people undecided, which we pretty much expect. There's a lot of education left to go for the statewide candidates. But I think where people are missing some things, I think if we go back and look, I think the same poll or a similar poll was conducted, for example, in July. And so if we're kind of looking at, where were voters in July to where they are today, some people are gaining momentum and some others aren't. So I think that is really where the story is there.
And tonight, we should remind listeners that tonight is pre-registration, right, for the Republican caucus as well.
There's a meeting, I
think.
A
meeting.
Hannah,
on how to register.
What meeting is happening today in Boone County about the caucus?
The Boone County Pachyderms at Grand Cru Restaurant in Columbia at 6 p.m., I believe. They're going to be hosting sort of like a little educational forum just for folks to come learn about how the caucus system works. So that's 6 p.m. in Columbia at Grand Cru.
And if you can't make it to that, I know a lot of people were like, where can I get online and get information? Typically, especially if you're in Boone County, I know Brianna Lennon has some of the information up, but now you can go to mogop.org, I believe, or I think you can also go to missouri.gop. Basically, search for Missouri GOP. You can get there, and they have caucus information up on the website.
And Mike Zweifel or Tony Lupo can help them as well, but that's absolutely correct. Stephanie, I'm fascinated by those polls in the gubernatorial race. Even though we're still months and months out, I'd be very curious what those are saying with those candidates. That's interesting.
And
undecided is leading the pack. I mean, that's the headline.
It really is. And so will those undecided folks break like what we see, the folks who have decided? I don't know.
And there's a Democrat who is challenging Crystal Quaid from Springfield, who's raising a lot of money too. Hamra. I don't know if people have noticed that, but he's got money. Now, he is not, if you look at the Twitter base, they want Quaid, but this guy, if he gets this kind of money and can continue to raise it, he's going to have enough for television advertising. I think he could be formidable.
It's interesting. If you look at, the overall political landscape in Missouri, aside from either end of 70, St. Louis is Kansas City, notwithstanding Columbia and Boone counties, important role. Southwest Missouri and Springfield, those are some engaged, committed, passionate voters. I mean, Governor Parson comes from that area, that part of the state. So, could make some waves there.
And this is the Mo Scout Remington poll, and there's some really interesting dynamics. I think there's a gender dynamic going on a little bit. One of the more interesting, because a lot of them are close or expected, one of the more interesting numbers I saw was for Lieutenant Governor. Holly Thompson Rader is up at 18%. The closest to her is Bob Onder at just 12.
Wow.
So, but she's the only female in the race. And when I look at this, if you go down to, let's see, the treasurer's race, if you recall, Lori Rook, who's an attorney in Springfield, has gotten in the race, but really you haven't heard anything from her.
Not much.
She's leading the pack at 13%, with Andrew Koenig at 12 and our incumbent Vivek Malik at 8. So it's, I don't know if there's, and then the poll breaks down by gender. And so it doesn't look like just women voted for women. But for some reason, if you're the only woman in these races, I would have expected Holly Thompson Rader to be ahead, maybe not ahead by as much as she is. But the Lori Rook thing, I really can't explain.
Well, and on Rader, on the gender breakdown, 19% of male voters and 17% of females going for Rader. So it's not just if you don't vote for me, you're not a woman. I mean, there's nothing to do with that, which is fascinating.
I thought it was interesting with the Mike Hamra thing because folks, we've talked to Don Luzader down in our Springfield office. Don said, this guy, we know him well down here, Mike Hamra. He owns about all the Wendy's and the Panera restaurants in a whole bunch of states, according to them. So, don't count him out.
And he owns some of the Wendy's here in Columbia as well. He does. I mean, I definitely know the name, including the one downtown, or at least his company does. I'm fascinated by the number you gave, or the statistics you gave about Vivek Malik, because we were all covering the Boone County when they had the pachyderm, or maybe it was the Lincoln days. He was the keynote speaker in Columbia last April. But he basically said that he thought the Republicans needed to do a better job of reaching out to the immigrant community. and he said the immigrant community was solidly behind Republicans in many cases. I thought that was interesting, but those numbers are really early. I don't know if there is a particular region of the state those numbers are, but I think there's probably a lot of people who've never even heard of this Lori Rook.
Well, and I will say the only race that where the undecided falls under 50% is in the gubernatorial race, and we'll go ahead and say this is the Mo Scout Remington poll from over the weekend, and there in the gubernatorial race, undecideds are just 42%, and we have seen a little bit of shifting in that since July. Ashcroft's still in the lead, coming in at 34%. That's the same as July. Eigel at 4%, surprisingly still the same as what he was in July. But Mike Kehoe's up to 20% from 14%. So at least some of those, it seems like some of the undecideds are breaking for Kehoe.
And but I'm a little bit surprised that, again, to mirroring the undecideds win, 59% of people are undecided when it comes to the Attorney General. However, Andrew Bailey only leads Will Scharf by 7% thus far. And I'm a bit surprised because of, name recognition means a lot. And he gets a lot of play with all of the federal suits and all of those that are circulating. So Will Scharf is certainly making a stand thus far.
In the media, and when you are the acting attorney or the attorney general, he was appointed to that position, but I mean he's running for a full term. When you're the attorney general, you get into a lot of headlines. But Randy, it's not just the lawsuits against the president and the Biden administration. I mean, Andrew Bailey has made the news locally for instance, the Brian Dorsey case, the death penalty case over in New Bloomfield that's getting a lot of attention right now. He flat out told us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri the guy should be executed. So, I mean, for him to only be up by 7 again, that poll, I don't know how accurate it is. But then I would think he'd be up by more than that.
Yeah, but then again, 24% is nothing to shake a stick at, especially when you're looking at incumbent Vivek Malik only being at 8%. So, I mean, 24% is still pretty significant.
Yeah.
I'm a bit surprised that Vivek is trailing the pack.
I'm really shocked by that, and I don't know, because we've got Andrew Koenig at 12%, Cody Smith at 9%, and certainly they've enjoyed some headlines through their work in the state legislature. But this whole Lori Rook at 13%, I can't explain that. I mean, have you heard anything? I don't know what she looks like. I don't know what she stands for. I know that I think she gave herself $500,000, I'm pretty sure, early on. But other than that, and I think, I think our current state treasurer, with all the work that he's done in divesting in China and some of these other policies, I think, once conservative Missouri voters get to know about his policies, he's been a really strong on the issues. So I'm pretty shocked to see those numbers.
He has a great story,
yeah.
His policy positions, and, just getting people back their money from unclaimed property, as well as the MoBucks program. I mean, that evaporated. All the money available went away because of his advocacy for it. So he's done a great job in our book. Well, something is cooking in that race along with the others. We'll be following it, of course, as things unfold. On Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 5-7.
vote Trump. If you want to defeat the deep state, vote Trump. If you want to fight inflation, vote Trump. If you want to revive national pride in this country, vote Trump. If you want to revive our national identity in this country, vote Trump. If you want to make America great again, vote Trump.
Well, we normally call it the Daily D.C. Rundown. Maybe it's the Daily New Hampshire Rundown.
And some days it's just the Trump rundown because, there's enough headlines about Trump that's all we really get to. But yeah, Vivek is fully on Team Trump, and we're going to find out today, I think, if it's over. Any bets on whether Nikki Haley drops out tonight, Randy?
I don't know. I mean, I think she may, I think if she gets a double-digit second place, a single-digit second place, I think she's still in it. I think there may be enough independent support, and there's been money rolling in since DeSantis dropped out, apparently. Grassroots money, so you never know. It's not over till she drops out.
All right, and on a somber note, we do want to mention that it was announced yesterday, the two names of the Navy SEALs who we lost. They were over on the coast of Somalia. One jumped in as they were prepared to get on a ship, and another, his fellow SEAL mate, jumped in after him. They were, of course, weighed down with lots of body armor and heavy equipment. And so their commander that oversees SEAL Team 6, Blake Cheney, said Chris and Gage selflessly served their country with unwavering professionalism and exceptional capabilities.
There's been some more strikes on Houthi targets overnight as well.
Yep. All right. And now McCarthy is also, as far as Congress, is saying the Freedom Caucus has stopped Republicans from being able to govern. And this, I think, previews our conversation that we're going to have with Senator Cindy O'Loughlin later, because I think she would say the same thing about the Freedom Caucus here in Missouri. But he had some harsh words to say and basically said, look, we're getting, you guys ousted me, but you've really got the same thing. And he said it really comes down to what's a true conservative. And I think a lot of conservatives around the nation are asking that too, and how we define that. And different people are defining it, I believe, in different ways.
Well, at what point does trying to play a weak hand in a strong way become bullying, right? There's a matter of standing on principle, but then some people perceive what's going on, I think, at that level and perhaps at this level in the state of Missouri as a little bit of bullying.
And McCarthy's pointing out, if we start compromising with Democrats, we get more left-leaning policies. So you say you're right, but the outcome isn't more conservative. He said they're actually spending more money now than if we would have gone with the debt ceiling numbers that I had proposed in the very beginning. So
yeah.
Interesting updates there. And then also we want to let you know that the court yesterday, the Supreme Court, big decision. The court allows the Border Patrol to cut Texas's razor wire along the Rio Grande. It was an unsigned order. Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett joined the liberals on the court for this. Now, Texas has installed quite a few rolls of this razor wire. We had a Fifth Amendment Circuit case that said, Texas, or that the feds can't come in and cut the razor wire. The Solicitor General yesterday came in and said this razor wire is preventing the federal government from performing their duties, that there's a very real risk of death along the stretch of the river, and that they need to be able to access what they can't access with the razor wire to be able
swing. And when it comes to chomping down on what's going on at local, state, national politics, I can think of no one better to chomp with than Christopher Arps. How you doing, Chris? Welcome to the program again.
Tobler, thank you. This is the highlight of my Tuesday morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm telling you, if we got you and Stephanie Bell in the same room and somehow canned the energy, the energy crisis would be solved. We wouldn't have to worry about it. We could just sort of, all the charging stations would be fueled for the next decade. She's excited too.
And long live the EVs, right?
You didn't happen to be out and about in St. Louis driving a fire truck yesterday, did you? I think that.
Oh my God! Can you believe? It's just a miracle that fire truck didn't hit a house. I mean, that was just surreal watching that.
Yeah.
You know, I think that fire truck was about every third post on my social media yesterday, and the other posts were all Jason Kelce shirtless, screaming at the Chiefs game. But as a fire wife, that video stresses me out.
What do you think? What do you think Mr. Kelce's blood alcohol content was yesterday, Sunday?
Which one?
Which one? That's a good one.
The one that's in the stands and it's 2 degrees outside with his shirt off.
So, Chris, where do you stand? I mean, you're a football fan, right?
Yes, I'm a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. Go ahead, start the joke now.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, did you know that the star stands for a rating, not just a logo?
Yes, I've heard that. Keep going. Keep them coming.
Cowgirls.
How do you weigh in on the Tony Dungy and others on one side of the fence that say this needs to be about a football game, the X's and the O's, and others, I happen to be in the others camp, think, wow, talk about this is some wholesome, organic inclusion without all of the political noise surrounding DEI. I mean, you're including a lot of women and Swifties who otherwise, who cares? I think it's a great thing. It's bringing people together in the football realm that weren't together before. What say you?
Yeah, sure. No, the thing that I just hate is every time that the Chiefs or Kelce does something great, they always go up to the stands to get Taylor Swift's reaction. I mean, how many times do we have to see that shot? Who cares?
Oh, now wait, I'm going to challenge you on that. Wait a minute. You're a political activist. Okay. If Chris Arps ran for CD3, and if Chris Arps won the GOP primary, and during the victory speech, they panned over to darling Becky, and she's smiling and giving it up for her hubby, I would find that warming and endearing. I would want to see that. I want to see what's going on in the candidate's family and in the people. You know, as the celebrity in whatever realm gets their celebrity, I like to see what's going on in their family, especially, the gal that's supporting the guy or the vice versa, the guy that's supporting the gal. You don't buy that?
Yeah, but people don't want to see that every 15 minutes, though. It gets old after a while. And, I'm 57 years old. I'll be 58 years old. It's been a long time since I have followed popular culture. And so I'm just sick of seeing her.
You said, show me those rear ends of all of the football players. I mean, what else are we watching? I
Producer Hannah, clip that out.
There's a lot of nothing going on. Or like Travis Kelce dancing. I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of downtime at a football game that we can show a couple shots of Taylor Swift as opposed to just guys bending over.
I think they're called tight ends.
How many years ago was
it?
How many years ago was it the Cowboys won the Super Bowl? No, we won't go there.
We won 2 in a row, 93 to 95.
95.
Chris,
that was before I was even born.
And I'm sure you've told Becky all those years you were just watching the Cowboys for the games. It had nothing to do with the cheerleaders, right? Nah.
No, you know what? I had, for my 50th birthday, my wife took me to Texas. I went to the 3 presidential libraries. I went to South Fork Ranch. But you know what the biggest thrill of that was? I got to visit AT&T Stadium. We took a tour. I kicked a horrible field goal on the field. There's a video of that. It was terrible. But the greatest experience was we got to go inside the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders locker room.
Oh.
And there's a picture of me posing in front of one of the pictures of the girls. They told us to try to strike the same pose that the cheerleader did.
Did they let you try on the uniform?
That's a picture that you'll never see.
I'm okay with that.
Now, Chris, in Dixville Notch overnight, 6 votes for Haley, none for Trump. Is this Haley's first stand, last stand, or something in between?
Hey, do you guys hear that? That's the fat lady warming up. I think it's over for Nikki Haley. Even if she does well in New Hampshire, there's really no forward path for her. And I think the final nail in her South Carolina campaign was when Nancy Mace, the congresswoman, who she helped when President Trump put a competitor against her, helped her win her race. She endorsed Donald Trump yesterday. You had Senator Scott, who endorsed Trump on Friday. You already had the governor of South Carolina endorse Trump. So I think she's going to actually drop out before South Carolina so she's not embarrassed.
Yikes. Well, what are you making of all this state polling? We got new state polling over the weekend, and a lot of folks are still undecided. Are you taking anything away from these polls?
Well, we had Jay Ashcroft on the show yesterday, and we talked about that poll that showed him with a double-digit lead over Bill Eigel and Governor Kehoe. There were a lot undecided, but I think a double-digit lead, especially when you're being outraised by your two competitors, it was pretty significant.
Hey, Chris, talk to us now that we're seeing things start shaping out. And Trump the other day hinting at a VP selection, possibly somebody in the background. We're hearing Kristi Noem and Elise Stefanik out of New York. Who do you like? Who do you think's got the inside track?
Well, I heard an interesting suggestion yesterday. Mark Halperin, the noted political journalist, before he had his fall, I get his newsletter. He was suggesting the Alabama freshman senator, I think her name is Catherine Britt.
Mm-hmm.
She is a big MAGA supporter. She has endorsed Donald Trump. I think anybody that has ran against Donald Trump, I don't think they're going to be in consideration for vice president. I think that his pick is probably going to be a female because the abortion issue is going to be huge, this issue. But you have to remember, Donald Trump likes a lot of the spotlight, and I think it's going to be someone that's not going to compete with him in that spotlight. And I think Kristi Noem or Governor Huckabee or even Carrie Lake, I think they will compete too much for him with the spotlight. So I think it's going to be a female, but it's going to be someone kind of low-key.
Chris Arps joins us at Chris_Arps on X, formerly Twitter. Chris, let
me say this, and I don't think it was a coincidence on Sunday that Senator Tim Scott proposed to his girlfriend.
Oh, I think that
you can't be on the ticket, national ticket, without being married. That looks bad. So I think he's on the very, very short list, and I think that engagement proposal, which I think is sincere, but I think that had something to do with it.
So let me test something out on you that I'm a pragmatist. Probably more so than some of the folks analyzing this from the MAGA perspective. Mm-hmm. If you look at the polls coming at Donald Trump from both sides, Nikki Haley versus Joe Biden kicks Donald Trump versus Joe Biden all over the place, right? I mean, It's double digits. Okay, in some polls. If you look at Donald Trump post-conviction versus Donald Trump only indicted versus Joe Biden, that's a different story. Joe Biden is either within the margin or clearly wins. Are you concerned, as I am, that while MAGA support is absolutely written in stone, galvanized, it ain't going to change, and it's strong, that without a VP who could be that next 8 years post a Trump presidency, that may be MAGA light, something a little more palatable to the middle, do you see any problems with a Donald Trump and then a Donald Trump VP candidate as being strong for the base, but not enough to get over the finish line?
I think so, but I saw a poll this morning. It was a Harvard CAPS poll that it said that when you throw in a third-party candidate, either Cornel West or RFK, Trump leads Biden by 7 points. I don't think these third-party candidates are going to drop out. A lot of them are vanity campaigns. So I share your concern, but I think as long as there are third-party candidates that are probably going to take votes away from Joe Biden, I'm not as concerned.
Do you think Joe Biden is? What is the chance that Joe Biden is not the GOP nominee's opponent in November?
You know what? I would probably put it about maybe 70-30. You hear the Democrats continually say, hey, he's our guy. We're going with him. He has proven that he can beat Donald Trump. But there's this wild card scenario that if the polls do not improve and President Biden's performance continues to look shaky, we could go back to the backroom deal conventions or backroom convention deals where I could see somebody at the Democratic convention, the power brokers maybe choosing someone else. And, the main person that we've been hearing is Michelle Obama. It's very interesting that the Democratic convention is going to be in Chicago this summer. And Dr. Tobler, you remember what happened at their last Chicago convention in 1968.
Yep. And I said I've been looking at Michelle for over a year now. I think we should be very worried if she's the person.
Should we be reading should we read anything into tonight? I mean, obviously Biden's not on the ballot. Dean Phillips thinks he's going to, pick up some votes here. Ultimately I think the liberals are going to tell us that, even if Biden doesn't do well, like it doesn't matter and he wasn't on the ballot and all these excuses. Should we buy that, or should we read into something tonight?
Well, I think the Democrats and liberals have made no secret that they are not happy with Joe Biden. They think he's too old. They're concerned about his stance on Israel. As much as they try to say that Bidenomics has helped everybody, they know that inflation is still high. They know they're still paying higher prices for gasoline and for energy. So I think he is very, very weak. But as I said, I think they are going to stick with him until it's too late, until it gets so bad that maybe they need to change up this summer.
All right. It is going to be, I think, the most interesting was very pejorative. I mean, used words like unhinged, lost her composure. And she said, of course, what set that off was on the floor of the Senate. It had to do with her saying, well, you're just running for governor. So
Which I know, like, Cindy O'Loughlin was my winner of the week last week. And Stephanie and I were kind of texting over the weekend about her. And we want Cindy O'Loughlin merch. So if the senator is listening right now, maybe she can hook us up. Okay.
I think it'd be really great. I don't love the she came unhinged. She was.
I agree.
I don't think that would be said about a man.
And I got in touch with Cindy and I said, look, he ripped into you today. I don't know if she heard it. And I think we should play some of that when we'll do that. I'll try to recover some of that and get her response to it.
And of course, they're back today. They took yesterday off for the weather, but I believe they're back. I didn't see that they were out today, so I think we expect them back in the building today. They've got a lot going on in committees, and so how all of those interviews and people, we know that the interviews have dusted up some stuff on the Senate floor in the background. And on the floor itself, so how those play out on the Senate floor today, we'll see.
Have you seen where sometimes parents of small children, where there's siblings who fight a lot, they'll buy a really large, oversized shirt, and they will write on the shirt, this is our get-along shirt. And they basically make both children wear the same shirt, so they're like trapped together until they figure it out.
I haven't seen that technique.
Like a three-legged race almost. You're basically strapped to the other person.
Maybe we should try to implement that.
I asked
Siamese
someone.
twins, huh?
Yeah. Well, John, superficially, one side, the Freedom Caucus, is saying, well, the leadership just isn't getting in front of it. They're not flooding the zone, overwhelming the Democrats who then couldn't filibuster anything. Let's get this thing going. And procedurally, the traditionalists, if you will, are saying, no, there's order in the Senate. I think it's gone beyond that. I think it's become personal.
Name calling.
And at what point, who can do either of them have a common friend who could get them in the room and say, look, is there any Rowden and Cindy, Caleb and Cindy and Eigel, and I don't know who's lockstep with Eigel. And get them in the room and say, guys, this is not good for our brand, the conservative brand. We have to fix this.
Yeah, and I would go beyond saying it's just personal. And I think, there are people who respect the institution and say this floor is for governing. It is not for campaigning. And I think that's really where the breakdown was. We heard that from Senator O'Loughlin and said,
right.
Yeah, we understand you're campaigning for something and we understand you want to make a point. You can do that all day long. But when we come to this floor, the people elected us to govern and to discuss and debate policies, and you're preventing us from doing that just because you want points on the campaign field. And we need to and I think that's where people are talking about respect for the institution.
And with all respect to my friend Bill Eigel, who I knew from a long time before he even ran for office, because he was friends with Bob Onder, and those were my digs early in radio or early on. I keep hearing from the Eigel campaign, oh, he's going to be the next governor. This is what the people want. Well, you look at the Missouri Scout poll; he's 4%.
I mean, that's below where Vivek Ramaswamy was.
So that belies the notion that everyone wants what Eigel and the Freedom Caucus want. I mean, we all want, I think, what they want, but maybe there's a smarter way to get it that is aside from personal politics.
We've heard all along going into this session from folks all across both aisles, it's just an election year and they're grandstanding. Well, the Chaos Caucus, now Freedom Caucus, they've been doing this in the Senate for several sessions. This isn't just an election year thing.
Good point. Hey, we didn't get to this story too much, but we will cover it a little bit later as well. But this mystery The Supreme Court allowing Border Patrol to cut razor wire. There's not a lot going on. Oh, yes, and polls in Missouri saying, wow, there's some surprises. Leading the polls, undecideds lead the polls. Stephanie Bell's over there.
Good morning.
Good morning. You're all dressed up in white today. It's a very nice look.
I'm doing my best Nikki Haley impersonation.
I was going to say, you're looking very Nikki Haley-ish.
White is for winners.
John Marsh is down there reveling over the fact that we may still have a race with Nikki getting the first 6 votes in New Hampshire overnight. No?
6 votes. Got him. Swept Dixville Notch.
It's a start. And Hannah, Hannah's over there rolling her eyes over Dixville. Go ahead, Hannah. It's your turn. Producer Hannah.
I'm not rolling my eyes, more or less trying to not have my head in the gutter.
Okay, all right.
Dixville knocks energy, right?
Yeah.
Well, for some history here, I'm checking out 2016 because, I'm thinking, who did these people, who are these people and who they vote for in 16? Apparently, they voted for Kasich in 2016. Mostly, I think Trump got 2 votes, Kasich got 3, and then on the Democrat side, they all voted for Bernie. So I don't know that they're a reliable source.
Before that, they voted for Mike Bloomberg.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So there's a mystery as 3 Kansas City Chiefs fans, quote, freeze to death, close quote, in a friend's backyard 2 days after the playoffs.
And one was on the porch, like not even in the backyard. And their family has come forward and said, what is happening here and why aren't you investigating? Why hasn't anybody been charged? This is a crazy story.
And John, reporters haven't named the friend's house, the friend's name, because he hasn't been charged. Authorities have said they're not investigating it as foul play, but something doesn't smell right about this.
It's weird, isn't it? Then you see the guys who are out there, and sometimes you hear the commentators. Didn't we see the Sub-Zero game at Arrowhead with a couple of people with no shirts on out there? And then you hear about something like this.
It just doesn't. Cops have reportedly doubled down on their determination that no foul play was involved in the deaths. They say they're treating the case as a death investigation, not a homicide investigation. I could imagine maybe that the 3 guys got so hammered and are toked up that they just froze to death. They just got hypothermia. But why wouldn't their friend go looking for them?
Right.
He was as loaded as they were.
He said he went to bed. He went to sleep. And,
For 2 days?
Well, initially he went to sleep.
Yeah.
And, we've all, been at a party and you're like, I'm out. Like, you guys keep doing your partying and I'm done.
Yeah.
Apparently his family was like looking for them for 48 hours and the guy wasn't returning any calls. And meanwhile, he's got dead people on his porch and in his backyard. And they're like, where are my friends? Then at that point, wouldn't you think to like go look where you last saw them? And his family's even suggesting, hey, maybe they were poisoned, which I would be like, maybe they had, I think maybe they had drugs. But, we've seen, John, we've just got that case in Jeff City about a gal trying to poison her husband.
Yeah, that's a good point. And she pleaded not guilty this week, too.
Friends and family are saying that, they were, my husband banged, this is a friend, my husband banged on the door for 20 minutes. My friend banged on his door and busted a window and yelled and announced her presence while she's inside and still nothing from him. The cops come 10 minutes later. He comes out nonchalant in his boxers with an empty wine glass in hand. There's just something so bizarre. I mean, maybe they were just so hammered that he was too.
And I think the families deserve an explanation of, okay, their BAC was 0.22, so they can't feel cold. So we don't suspect that anything weird happened. But also as the victims, if they weren't, because I think most people are thinking, yeah, maybe they were just drunk or on drugs or something. But if they weren't, then they should be cleared of that as well, right? Like we need more information for sure. And I think the fact that, the family's not getting any answers is not helpful here. Toxicology
reports, I think, will tell a lot about this story.
But it's already been a while. Like we should have had that by now, right?
Well, but remember, weren't there? Didn't it take forever to get toxicology on the Friends dude who died in his hot tub?
Matthew Perry?
Yeah, it turned out to be, what was it?
I don't know.
Some kind of, it was ketamine.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
ketamine. Remember? Because he was being treated for that
It's used to treat depression, right?
Under medical supervision. Yeah. It's been sort of a novel treatment.
Drug.
Yeah, John, you may have friends. I know I have patients whose moms would tell me that back in the 50s, in fact, my mother-in-law talks about that. Apparently, when she was delivering, that was a standard thing to use ketamine during obstetric deliveries. And you talk about women were just literally dancing on the ceiling, just literally. They were just dancing around. They didn't know what was up. It was.
I mean, having done it 3 times, I would have said, give me whatever you
ketamine.
got. Give me the good stuff.
We're a little more elegant now. We have better ways of dealing with that. But they've been using it for severe recalcitrant headaches and for depression, but under medical supervision because it is a respiratory depressant, as are most of these things. So you mix one of those kind of medications, or in this case, recreational drugs, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or stronger, and a hot tub, for instance, and it doesn't take long, and kaput, you're done. Your blood pressure goes down. You stop breathing. It's all over. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think you're right, Stephanie. We have more to learn on this.
While we're on our medical topics here, you mentioned your friend earlier, Dr. Bob Onder.
Yes.
And I think we heard a big rumor about him for this week. We're suspecting that he might be exiting the lieutenant governor's race and entering the CD3 race.
Yeah.
He was in Iowa chumming with everybody, got lots of good photos. But then also we got a big announcement yesterday that Senator Travis Fitzwater posted a lengthy thing about his family on Twitter and said, officially, I'm out. I think we heard also from Nick Shore that he is out because he said he wouldn't run against Dr. Bob. And so that field is narrowing. And right now, there's still some lane for, there's some lane for a mid-Missouri candidate.
Have we heard any more from Tony Lutkemeyer? There was some speculation there, maybe?
Not recently. And of course, there's a lot of, you've got Taylor Burks, you've got Taylor. Senator Rowden, you've got, Sarah Walsh.
Right.
You've got lots of people who haven't said no, but haven't said yes. So that race is shaping up to be, I think, pretty interesting.
Yeah. And we need to touch base with Taylor when it comes to the Houthi thing, because he spent some time over there in that part of the world. And so we hope to get him on, soon to talk about that. Maybe we can tease a little commitment or not out of Taylor. And Sarah, I have reached out to Sarah a couple times, and she's still contemplating it, right? From all I can tell, because I'm not hearing that there's been any decision.
Are you talking about Sarah Walsh?
Sarah Walsh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to, announced candidate who we had on the show last week, Senator Coleman, Mary Elizabeth Coleman. She's saying that she's raised a lot of money. I think she's already reported $100,000, and she's saying she has commitments to $200,000. So as you're entering that race, there are a lot of questions, and I keep hearing that people are out making phone calls, and I think you have to know that you can get to a number that makes you a viable candidate before you were to give up on something else. Now, Dr. Bob can self-fund, and he's already
he put in like $500,000 already, didn't he?
Right.
Of his own money.
And I know nothing about the inside, behind the closed doors, smoke-filled rooms of politics, but it would seem to me that if you look at what's going on in the national scene, where there's a rapid coalescence behind Donald Trump. And Nikki Haley, I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. I think it's good to have other voices in the campaign to a certain point. But when it comes to Missouri electoral politics, as a voter and as a conservative, I would like to think that, hey, why don't we focus on the general? Let's get behind a candidate that we know has a really good chance. Let's all coalesce, and the movement has a better chance rather than the infighting, because none of us have liked what we've seen at the House of Representatives and Speaker, infighting. The Freedom Caucus here in Missouri, that's not worked out well. Infighting, the circular firing squad at the national level never seems to work out well. It's the Reagan mantra, just be careful about what you say about others. Let's get that behind us.
Well, we don't have to focus on the general because we know, whoever we put up is likely going to win because Missouri is so red right now. And so that allows us the flexibility to fight it out in the primary. And I think in order to get to where you want to go, Randy, I think we are going to have a wake-up call. And I think, when a race gets really, really close, when a Democrat pulls off an upset, that's when we're going to say, oh, maybe what we're doing isn't smart for the movement.
Wise words.
But
that's
it's going
true.
to be, but unless we get to that point, I don't see the infighting stopping.
You're right. And I guess that's what's really unique about the American way. Whether it's policy decisions, whether it's electoral politics, Americans are peculiarly reactive and not proactive, right?
And they're forgetful. They're so forgetful. I mean, when Matt Blunt got elected, I mean, it was a huge win. And so 20 years ago, I mean, it was everyone's on the same team. We've waited for this moment. We have these priorities. Let's take the opportunity we've been given and use it wisely. And how soon we forget. I mean, and so people just assume that Republicans will always be in power and forget that it hasn't been that long that we've been in power, and they're taking it for granted.
Jay Nixon.
Yes, yeah. You know, John, it really reminds me of when I think back as a young pup and just looking at the people who, even though they were on the other side of the fence, the Tip O'Neills, you know, the Henry Jacksons, Scoop Jacksons, and those on the Republican side of the fence, while there was public disagreement and dissension and maybe even some fist pounding, at some level you knew that there was statesmanship going on. And it seems like people have become so narcissistic that they're more interested in themselves than the movement, you know, and that trouble. And in America or in Missouri or in Boone County, you know, I think we have to we've lost that, don't you think?
Well, you think back to the Southern Democrats back in the day who were not liberal by any means.
Yeah. Stephanie Bell has no interest in CD3?
No interest.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Well, we hope
Gotta
not.
ask.
First right's a refusal. I mean, after all.
No
Okay. I don't know.
I think Mr. Bell has weighed in on that one as well.
He has.
Okay, so I'd like to know what y'all are thinking out there. We're gonna have to figure this out. What's Hot with Hannah's coming up, and we're not going to have time there because I promise Hannah I'm going to get to things on time more often than not as we go forward.
Oh, okay. So
that was
the
a
rule
big butt.
changes.
That was a big butt. Did you hear the butt?
Yep, it's
Okay.
coming.
But
there it is.
But come like 8:10, I want everyone's opinion on where you're calibrating your vote in Missouri electoral politics, and how much infighting you will tolerate, and when do you exclude a candidate when it's become too harsh and too shrill. We're going to ask those kinds of questions of Cindy O'Loughlin when she joins us at 7:35. And now I'm going to step aside and be on time for What's Hot with Hannah, because what time it is?
It's about damn time. That's what time it is.
Listen to this. Oh, man. Wow. Well, what's hot with Hannah? Here we go.
At 7:25, as it should be. I brought my Stanley Cup in today.
Ah, yes.
It had taken a brief vacation because it was being washed.
Oh, you did wash it so that you didn't have the cooties growing on it.
Well, I took it home to wash it, but really it sat in my car for like a week, and then I washed it.
Because of the weather.
Does the cold weather kill the cooties?
Yeah. Yeah. But I have not gone as crazy as this one Stanley Cup fan, making headlines this morning on Fox Business because she got arrested for her Stanley Cup addiction. And it's
got arrested?
She got arrested. We're going to the state of California, where a woman was arrested after she stole 65 Stanley Cups and water bottles.
What was their limit? Wasn't it like they weren't going to arrest anyone for under like $800? But Stanley Cups are pretty expensive. I got to do the math on that.
Well, the value was almost $2,400.
Wow.
And it wasn't just like the classic Stanley Cup, you know, the big 5-gallon bucket with a handle on the side of it. It was, you know, they make kids' little tumblers. They make slim, like, travel coffee mugs. So it was an assortment of Stanley branded cups. But yeah, over $2,500. She got busted, and it sounds like she basically loaded it up in her cart at Target and just kind of tried to walk out of the store as if she
just kept going.
Yeah, as if she owned them. But she got busted pretty quickly on the highway as she was making her exit. And there is a photo of all of these Stanley Cups in their glory on the hood of the police car of the officer who busted her.
How does that square with some of the stories we've heard where store employees have been reprimanded and in some cases fired because they chased after would-be shoplifters?
Right.
Because I don't know why those policies are in place. Are they worried about personal injury to the employee and then some kind of liability?
I think so.
Huh.
Well, and I think also some stores got into trouble because employees would maybe try to accuse a customer of shoplifting, and then someone, you know, plays the race card, or they end up not having stolen anything, and then it puts the employee in a bad spot and opens the store up for lawsuits.
That fires me up when someone accuses someone of taking someone else's stuff. Really fires me up. I'm telling you, I can't take it. That is so. Can you believe that someone would ever accuse someone of doing that? Like maybe taking their lunch out of the refrigerator?
I heard there were allegations flying last week, and I saw the finger being pointed at you, Randy.
No, okay.
She texts me.
Listen.
My favorite producer, Hannah. You didn't by chance sort of accidentally maybe grab my... I'm like, is that what you think of me, Hannah?
What, did you have some leftover Buffalo Wild Wings from the 2023 football season?
Now, that would be in peril. That I might grab.
No,
So
listen.
he's denying. Did we find the real culprit?
No.
Oh, here we go. Oh, this is like anti-racism. If you deny that you took it, somehow that means you took it. Is that what's going on here?
I don't know.
Listen, the background on this, okay, John, I haven't gotten to rant to you about this yet. On Friday, I brought a high-protein, low-carb buffalo chicken burrito that I meal prepped from home, okay?
Oh, wow.
That sounds yummy.
Yeah, I blended cottage cheese for the sauce. It was a whole thing. I put it in the break room refrigerator, and it was gone when I went to grab it at 10 a.m. No one eats lunch that early. Where did my burrito go?
Did they steal your dish, too?
It was
To see Cindy O'Loughlin, who is somebody I respect and admire, reduced to nothing more than personal insults, and just completely lost her composure, was shouting at me, was yelling at me, calling me all sorts of names, because she was very upset that I had, I guess, the gall to demonstrate to the whole state that they weren't really serious about getting these things done. She really didn't handle it well, and I think the implications of that are not good for the rest of the Senate as we move forward.
Well, that was Senator Bill Eigel going after my friend Cindy O'Loughlin. Senator O'Loughlin, of course, is the majority floor leader of the House, and of the Senate, sorry. And I was just stunned, Cindy, when my audience on Saturday morning heard that. And I wanted you to have a chance to talk about what's going on in the Senate and what happened last week that led to that little back and forth. Welcome to the program.
And good morning to you, Randy.
It's another week, another battle.
You know, I think I've said this before. Too bad we can't take the politics out of politicians. There's a recording of every exchange that takes place in the Senate. So, you know, anyone could request that if they wanted to. But, you know, from my perspective, what happened was we started into the order of business, and Senator Eigel got up and tried to do an end run around our normal process and bring a piece of legislation directly to the floor. And, of course, the rest of the Senate would not go along with that. And he basically is cutting off any public comment, any ability for other senators to review what it was he was bringing up. And it's kind of odd because the week before he tied up the floor talking about how we all need to have 48 hours to read the bills, that we're not reading the bills completely. And then the next week, fast forward, he brings one up that, you know, no one has seen. It hasn't gone through the vetting process. So, you know, every week it's a new story.
It's really difficult. Also on Scott Vaughn's show this weekend, he basically said we need new leadership in the Senate and that would solve his problems. Apparently, I saw you had kind of conducted a statistical analysis of Freedom Caucus members' legislation. Can you talk a little bit about that analysis and whether or not you think, you know, in your response to him calling for a leadership change?
Well, I mean, he voted for me to be the floor leader. And yet this year, last week, tried to take over the floor leader position and really actually the responsibilities and authorities of the pro tem. So, you know, whether he agrees with it or not, I believe this is all a political quest on his part. He's running for governor. He wants to present himself as the only person who has good conservative ideas, and really, you know, that's just not true. The complaint last year from people who are in the conservative caucus, and we need to remember they've started two different separate caucuses from the Republican caucus. They refused to come to the caucus this year where we set priorities and talk about what each individual senator wants to do. So when there's a gap in communication, I mean, I think that kind of falls on them. And their complaint last year was they were not given adequate floor time in the preceding years. And so I made sure that their priorities did get to the floor. I compared the amount of number of bills that they had on the calendar, which on average exceeded the other senators' bills. I made sure that they got a fair shot at passing the things that were their priorities. So words and reality are kind of not matching up here.
Senator Cindy O'Loughlin joins us, the Senate Majority Leader here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Senator, something we've seen used very, very sparingly on the Senate side, but the folks over in the House chamber use it, is the PQ. Moving the previous question, if things continue as they are, would this be one of those sessions where we'll see the PQ, the nuclear option, used on the Senate side?
You know, the Senate has a long tradition of open debate. Sometimes it seems like endless debate, and we want to continue that. I put together some information about the things that we want to accomplish this year and some of the backup to that. We have 12 initiative petition bills filed, 12, where we are trying to protect the Missouri Constitution from being changed every time an out-of-state group wants to get something on the ballot and get it passed. We have 20 school reform bills filed regarding virtual education, additional accountability measures for schools, more parental choice, transparency in what is being taught, a teacher baseline salary grant program, and we have 31 tax reform bills filed. Now, the process is designed to send those bills to committee, let each of them be heard, take into account public input, try to decide what we feel is the best bill going forward, and then bring it to the floor of the Senate and have it debated there and then voted on. So all of those outcomes are basically stuck in the wings while what I fondly call the Chaos Caucus holds the floor and prevents things from coming up. So how we will navigate those waters, I guess we'll find out.
Senator, I just, for the record, I heard you reference the Chaos Caucus. You're, of course, referring to the Freedom Caucus, which are Republicans. And again, for our listeners, Republicans have a 24-10 supermajority. If they would ever somehow get united down there, they could probably pass almost whatever they want. But clearly, there's a disagreement between the two sides. I appreciate, Senator, you coming on. And the media always focuses on you as being the majority leader in Jefferson City, and you are a very, very powerful position. But you also are the state senator in the 18th district and serve a lot of our listeners in Randolph and Audrain counties. So my question to you is more in your capacity as the senator from the 18th. The governor's going to go to the podium tomorrow to deliver his final State of the State address, 3 o'clock tomorrow, rare joint session of the General Assembly. What do you want to hear from him? What would you like to hear from him on issues, particularly transportation or something else?
Well, I mean, I think we indicated that our priority is to, first of all, get I-70 in a condition that we consider safe and allows traffic to move freely through the state. We're committed to that. We want to see that through. As far as the 18th district goes, I mean, there are a lot of improvements that I think I've talked about several times over the years. Mm-hmm. We need additional repair to roads that have been allowed to disintegrate into really a very poor condition. Now, last year, they did spend additional money, but the problem is that the roads have disintegrated to the point that even if you put a different surface on, it doesn't last very long. Mm-hmm. So we need to address that. And I think the maintenance, for instance, when it snows or it's icy, we have a lot of trouble getting secondary roads cleared, and sometimes they're just not cleared at all. And I happen to know some of the people who work in the maintenance sheds, and I think that they are being called to go to St. Louis or Kansas City to help out there because they don't have enough help. So, you know, we feel that people in the rural area are kind of left to the lowest position on the list, and we'd like to see that change.
I think that was very interesting. That's the first I've heard of that there are MoDOT employees in the sheds in Northeast Missouri being pulled to St. Louis or Kansas City because there's not enough help there. Did I hear that right?
Yes, you did.
Wow. That's a big deal.
You know, it may sound that's unrelated to some of the division and divisiveness going on in the Senate. But I think people fail. I'm watching just an avalanche of text here. Why doesn't she lead? Why can't they get something done? and I think about what's going on at the federal level, Cindy. First it was Speaker McCarthy. Now it's Speaker Johnson. And there seems to be a small contingent of people with loud voices who think that with that somehow you can bully your way out of usual order to getting what you want. If my IP reform bill isn't the one that makes it out of committee, by golly, I'm going to make sure it does. That doesn't ever seem to work out well in terms of what all of us agree we ultimately want. Does it? And it's the same in this matter. If you've got big money, big representation, large population centers on either end of 70, I mean, let's be realistic about it. I agree with you, and I hear what you're saying loudly, but there is a reality of a workforce shortage, and all of the people in Missouri need to be served, right? And that's where I think it's difficult to manage that kind of a reality.
Well, it is. I mean, MoDOT's not any different than anyone else in the public or the private sector. They're going to have trouble filling the roles and having enough people to work. And I don't think anyone expects a miracle, but it's pretty disheartening to have the people that are employed and live in our area be taken and sent to St. Louis because they don't have enough people to fill their roles. So, it's kind of like the Senate. If you want to have a good result, you have to sit down like adults, talk about the pros and cons, figure out what it is that you're trying to achieve, and find a path forward. It's easy to get on the radio or, get in print and tell people that the leadership's no good in the Senate and, we just need to do what I'm demanding. And if we do that, everything's going to be fine. But that's just not the way it works. And I don't think the people of the state really would want it to work that way.
Cindy, let me ask you this. Go ahead. Well, okay.
Well,
I'm going to ask you this. You're a person of faith. I see it on your Facebook. You are doing a weekly podcast now to explain what's going on. It seems as though there's a need. You have related to that a personal amount of humility in terms of recognizing reality, being a good listener, and trying to take all sides and get things done. Why is it that we can't have some humility among all of your colleagues in the Senate to get down and, like you said, maybe be willing to blink a little bit? If everyone blinks a little bit, is it possible that you and Senator Rowden could maybe move things along quicker so there isn't that last-minute rush? I don't know. Is it possible that the Eigels and the Freedom Caucusers of the world could say, hey, let's let them do their work because they are about the same things we are? Or is that just a pipe dream?
No, I mean, I think we did that last year. I spent a lot of time talking to all the senators and asking what they wanted to get done, offering to help them get it done. And it seems like what has changed this year is it's an election year. And several of the people in the Freedom Caucus are running for statewide positions. And while Senator Eigel doesn't like me to connect what's going on with that, I mean, I believe there's a direct connection. If you're the loudest voice and you're talking about how you would get all of these things done if we just had better people on the other end, well, people who don't understand how it actually works might fall for that. But, you need to have open and fair debate, and we need to be able to get to the conservative measures we actually do have that are sitting and waiting for the ability to get to the floor.
Now, we've only got about 30 seconds here, but I want to end on a positive note. You did mention that, the normal process is that these measures move through and these proposals move through committee. So what is on your plate this week as far as bills that you are looking forward to hearing from people on in committee this week?
Oh, my goodness. Well, the ones that I mentioned before, we have 12 initiative petition bills filed. We have 20 school reform bills filed. We have 31 tax reform bills filed. We have probably at least six bills filed that have to do with utility and energy generation. Let's don't forget that, we had a real concern this year that customers were going to be literally almost priced out of the market and have to shut off their air conditioners in the middle of summer. I mean, all of those things are waiting to be heard.
All right. Well, Senator Cindy O'Loughlin, we thank you for answering the tough questions and continuing to ask that your leadership be respected. mean, we have had a firestorm of texts back and forth, critical of leadership in the Missouri Senate, critical of us, of me. Well, I'll address that in a minute. That's cool. We'll do that. Back and forth. Stephanie, you've been back and forth on some of the texts. 573-874-9390. We will invite your calls and your texts and talk about that. But there's lots going on the roads. We're not out of the woods yet from yesterday.
We aren't. And, I think the highways are pretty good. I drove Highway 63 this morning and didn't have any issues. Of course, slowed down on some of the secondary roads. But you said even the sidewalks out here were still pretty slick. But we are getting a lot of texts, especially if you're out in rural areas, saying Cole County especially, even down toward the lake, that they are just really icy. Some of those lettered highways are still pretty slick. So take your time if you're getting out this morning. And then also, John, we're hearing there's tons of fog in Jefferson City as well.
Yeah, the fog really rolled in when we got here early on. It was kind of patchy, and now in Jefferson City, fog's pretty thick. And I know my gravel farm lane was pretty darn icy this morning as well. So I can attest to that. County roads, though, doing pretty good, my experience.
We have most of the, John's absolutely right, have some fog as well here in Columbia, Stephanie, but not quite as bad as Jefferson City. But most of the school districts in the listening area have actually closed today, and it's due to the hazardous.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, they
what
have.
About Southern Boone?
Yeah, including Southern Boone R1. Secondary streets, roads, hazardous travel conditions. CPS Jefferson City are on the 2-hour delayed start. But one thing CPS, as Michelle Baumstark pointed out, the extra 2 hours, because normally Hickman, I'll just use the high schools as an example, Rockbridge, Hickman, and Battle. They all go in normally at 8:55. Well, it's 10:55 this morning that they'll go in. So the additional 2 hours gives them time to ensure that lots and walkways are ready. Yeah, good stuff. That interview, by the way, with Cindy O'Loughlin, wow. I mean, that was really, really, I haven't seen the texts. You guys have, but I thought she said a lot of interesting stuff, and my takeaways are a little different than most people. But if MoDOT is pulling people out of the Northeast Missouri, Randy, you mentioned the population center. That is not what that's set up for. That's set up specifically. MoDOT is set up specifically not to pull people out of unless something has changed a particular region, maybe for a one-time thing, but not regularly. I thought that was interesting.
Well, we had one of our listeners texted and said that they've pulled MoDOT workers from western Missouri to the Boone County area. To help in this area.
I'm not. This is the first I've heard of this. So
well, I mean, you could argue it's a deployment of resources to where you have larger population centers. You may not like it, but I mean, if you're a leader, if you've got to manage, I don't know. I'm not making a judgment there, but it's not an irrational thing to consider if it's within the scope of their authority.
Or maybe you're just saying people in rural Missouri drive big A trucks and know how to mind their own.
If you got a big A truck, you just don't need it.
Handle their business, and so then we have to send all of our resources to the people in the city who can't handle their business.
I'm just saying.
I think the other thing to keep in mind
if you don't have studs and chains on your tires or a big A truck, I don't know. I'm happy to lend you some of my MoDOT workers.
Her district though has received in the last, let's say, 2 weeks, they've received the heaviest snowfall in the state, Northeast Missouri. They have by far. You know that from your farm in Macon.
I went up there Sunday to check things out ahead of the storm because I figured we're going to have another power outage because of the ice storms. And I mean, it was like night and day. I mean, it was like the difference between Florida and North Dakota.
I spent 4 years in Kirksville. Trust me, I know. I think I wore long johns under my clothes every day and a ski coat.
You wouldn't think that small degree in latitude makes a difference, but there's something about the weather currents or something. I guess Tony Lupo could tell us about that, but it's weird.
I remember interviewing then Governor Jay Nixon at I believe it's called Thousand Hills State Park. Yeah, up there in Kirksville. You know it well, Stephanie. Beautiful park up there. And I'm trying to remember who he was with, but it was State Representative Paul Quinn was up there and the DNR director at the time. But I remember we were talking, I saw the former Governor Jay Nixon, this is many, many years ago, and we were talking about this very thing. when I had left Moberly, I didn't need a coat. By the time I got to Kirksville, I needed a coat. It was cold.
There you go.
It was literally cold.
The same things happened to me, and I think it's so flat up there, so the wind really gets you. But I did the same thing. I went back for homecoming, and they were having a parade, and I left here, and my sister said, it's 32 degrees here. I said, you're kidding. It's 60 in Columbia, and sure enough, we got there, and it was frozen.
The drifts were terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I was walking through foot and a half high drifts. You know, the snow was maybe 8 inches, but compared to what? A dusting here.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's crazy.
And we're hearing from Rebecca that she's waiting patiently in the ditch. Gravel roads are horrible, she said. She's up near Mexico. So, yeah, if you're out there, please be careful.
And that area, again, got the bulk of it. Again, Cindy O'Loughlin's district yesterday. But I've talked to superintendents to our south and John's neck of the woods. I've talked to Camdenton folks. I've talked to Marys County, and they're also, again, the roads are just not safe enough for, in their opinion, for buses to travel on. So in Columbia and Jefferson City being very careful as well. But yeah, there was ice, Randy. It was 38 degrees this morning overnight, and there was a lot of ice in my apartment complex on the steps. It was very dangerous to come down, so be careful on sidewalks. And a lot of the emergency room calls and a lot of the people going in there are people falling in the ice. I can hear it on the scanner.
Yeah.
Not necessarily today, but I heard it all day yesterday.
MoDOT in Boone County had to pull employees from all surrounding counties just to cover the main roads, says Dwayne. So a lot of things, yesterday he was telling us how grader operators are having to put chains on the tire. It's just been an unusual situation. This harkens back to 21 when we had the big polar vortex then.
There was, and Patrick McKenna, I know, listens to the show. It'd be nice to have him on the show sometime to talk about it. I know that they have, they're short-staffed. I know that, and they've been making a monumental effort. I think the last time I saw Director McKenna in person, it was back in the fall at a couple of safety events here in town, and we talked a little bit about that. Yeah. But they're doing the best they can. Yeah. I know and I thought overall they did a fine job. It's just an ice storm is really hard.
Not much you can do with it.
No, and those tractor trailers were crashing left and right on I-70.
Well, Vic says it's still slick in the gravel. I just fell in my driveway. Vic, among others, have said, Randy, are you taking sides? Are you impartial? You're carrying her, meaning Cindy O'Loughlin. A disabled veteran says, I agree with the Freedom Caucus. As a disabled veteran, I believe in the U.S. Constitution and the Missouri Constitution. I believe in the right to life. I appreciate what the Freedom Caucus is doing. I would just ask...
Which is what?
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, you just heard Cindy O'Loughlin said, 13...
Holding things up?
13 initiative petition bills are in committee.
Well, and to be fair here, Bill Eigel is arguing, it depends on perspective here.
I agree.
Bill Eigel is arguing that O'Loughlin, now, if at first...
And Rowden.
Yes. But he told us at the prayer breakfast it was personal property tax cuts. He said if that bill doesn't come up, he'll filibuster every day and read out of the dictionary. Now it's the initiative petition. So I think it's those two. O'Loughlin told us today, I wrote it down, I believe it's school choice IP reform. It seems like they're on agreement on principle, but not the way to do it. And the Democrats, and I know the Democrats in Jeff City listen to our show, they just love this. They love it because they don't have to do anything.
Oh, yeah. John Rizzo piped up the other day and said it's great.
Yeah, I mean,
sit back.
They don't have to filibuster or anything, and it doesn't sound like it's getting any better at all. But with our audience, I don't know. I don't know how the bulk of them feel.
Here's my question, and I've responded by text, and I'll respond now on air. There are more people that agree with Cindy O'Loughlin and Caleb Rowden's leadership among the Republican caucus than there are Freedom Caucus members.
Correct.
If that's the reality, and if you're a leader, okay, let's just do a thought experiment. Why don't we put Bill Eigel in leadership position? Can he force the non-Freedom Caucus members to vote his way? I don't know how he does that procedurally.
In other words,
you have to get along with people to get things done.
If Bill Eigel were theoretically the president pro tem or the majority leader, would he be able to get enough votes to pass particularly what he wants? Probably not. The 10 Democrats are pretty united, and now, the supporters, I haven't seen the texts. You guys have them, but I've heard from listeners that basically think the leadership, I've heard this term before. O'Loughlin hates this term. She doesn't like it.
Yeah.
I've heard the term rhino. That is a term, and Cindy O'Loughlin really disputes that. She feels like that is unfair. But I don't know.
Vic Rackers is saying, I'm not a disabled veteran. Vic, let's not turn this into a spitting match. I was referencing another texter.
Correct.
Did you hear me, Brian?
Yeah.
Vic and everyone, settle down.
You were talking
Cool your jets, people.
Well, and
Take
I would
a
say,
breath. I didn't say, Vic, that you were a disabled veteran. I said you fell down in your driveway, and I referred to another texter who said, I'm a disabled veteran. Vic, listen, please. Settle down, everyone. We're not going to get anything done if we continue this peeing match.
Well, and I would say, again, when you're talking about, what could Eigel accomplish? And he obviously he's running for governor. But, Brian, from history, I mean, if you burn all your bridges in the legislature and then you're elected governor, guess what? You're not getting very, very few things done. And of course, Governor Parson and I think and the legislature largely agree on things.
Yeah.
But there are things that Governor Parson wanted that didn't get done.
Yeah, and Randy, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to answer your point. You're absolutely well taken. You're doing fine. And to defend you were talking about a different person, about the disabled veteran.
And by the way,
you were.
For those of you who think that I don't see some stock in what Bill Eigel and the Freedom Caucus, I'm dear friends with Bob Onder. I've known Bill Eigel longer than probably anyone here has ever heard of Bill Eigel. And I have asked people that are working in the offices of the non-Freedom Caucus members, people that have been on this program before, that are not elected officials, and said, what's going on? Why do you guys procrastinate so much? Why is this mad rush in the last week? I am upset about that.
Well,
why would you do that? You don't wait till the night before your term paper is delivered to start to work on your term paper.
Well, and actually, when you and I have talked off air, too, I kind of feel like you're carrying the water for the Freedom Caucus, and I push back against you, and you say, no, I think, here's why I agree with this and this and this.
Anyone that looks at the chaos that happens at the end of each session, going back for years, what in the world? These are adults. You guys got homework to do. Do your homework. Get the job done before the last day of session.
Well, again, and I know tensions are high.
I got too much coffee going here.
Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, doctor.
I have a suggestion, too. Go ahead.
But Stephanie makes a very good point. Let's just say, hypothetically, Bill Eigel wins the nomination.
Good point. Yeah.
If he does, and he is very popular with our base. He's popular. If he wins, I do believe a Republican will be the next governor. Right now, I can't see outstate Missouri voting for a Democrat right now. I could be wrong on that. We'll see. They certainly haven't recently. But how would he get along with the General Assembly if he is in the governor's mansion? I don't know, but I will use Eric Greitens quickly as one example. Governor Greitens, before forget all the other issues he had later on, but one of the mistakes he made, I believe, is the first thing he did when he became governor is he called the legislature career politicians. And that did not, I don't know if anybody remembers that did not go over well with his own party. Ron Richard particularly didn't care for that. Some of them had been there a long time, but he that was a term he used on the campaign trail, and he used it
mixed. Dow slightly down, S&P and NASDAQ just slightly up. I also want to mention we're getting some numbers in about Missouri's economy, and a lot of folks have been really skeptical about our budget, saying we had these huge surpluses from all the federal money and we're going to take a nosedive. But at the close of business on Friday, we're seeing good January revenues, up 30% compared to January 2023. And that big jump has us then teetering back into the green as opposed to the red. So it's looking like maybe the budget woes that people were predicting over the interim aren't headed this way if we can hold on as we continue through the year. So that is good news for Missouri. If you have an iPhone, and I know lots of folks do. Do you have an iPhone, Randy? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you're an Apple guy. You've got your iPad and your whole thing. All right. Well, so a couple things. I'm not usually freaked out by iPhones, but I think I am freaked out by this. But one way, if you're freaked out about your security, you should know this. So they did a new iOS release. Yeah. And part of that, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that there's a new thing you can turn on, and it's called stolen device protection. So you'll want to Google it because you have to, get into your settings and turn this on. But essentially what they were finding, and the Wall Street Journal uncovered some folks who have gone to prison because not only are they stealing your phone, but somehow they're stealing your passcode. Maybe they watch you in a public place enter your passcode if you're not using biometrics. And once they know your passcode, they're getting into and locking you out of everything. They can sometimes access your bank accounts, and they're draining your money. Maybe they're stealing your photos. And so really you're at risk if someone takes your phone and then knows your code. And so this essentially, if you turn on this stolen device protection, even if they know your code, it would create a delay. First, it would require biometrics, is one way. And then if you want to get in with just your code, it kind of mixes your code plus your frequented locations. So based on your GPS, it knows, suddenly if my phone is in Florida and someone's trying to use just the code, it's like, nah, I don't think that's Stephanie. So, I think banks have gotten smarter about when they flag fraudulent transactions. And I think Apple's kind of adopting some of that. Like, what is her normal pattern? Is this something unusual? And do we think they have so much data? Certainly they kind of can identify when they think the activity is unusual. So if you've updated to the latest iOS, you might check that out. I think that is a nice feature from Apple. The thing that I'm not enjoying is suddenly I open my phone and I'm like, what is this new icon? I didn't download this app. What is this? And I was scared to click on it, but it's called Journal. And I get it. When you get a new iPhone, you get like their regular things, their music app, their texting app, their utilities app. That's fine. But Journal doesn't seem like a utility. It seems like something kind of fluffy. And I'm like, I didn't download that. But I guess when my phone updated, it automatically put that in there. And then it's encouraging you to journal every day, which I guess give Apple more of your personal information.
Oh,
and
no.
It can ask you certain questions like, what is a hidden talent of yours that you may
who allegedly, Stephanie reminds us we must say that.
My good friend Jennifer Bukowski always, who's a criminal defense attorney, always reminds me to be careful in my word choice.
Who allegedly poisoned her husband. Give us the context here, John.
Yeah, this is 37-year-old Sarah Sheffer, who was an art teacher to Jefferson City School, pleaded not guilty to attempted murder and armed criminal action. She was accused of adding the root of the lily of the valley plant into food and drinks and serving them to her husband. He put up a surveillance camera and caught it on surveillance video. Lily of the valley doctor contains cardiac glycosides.
Yeah. So, it's in the foxglove plant. Those, a lot of many
digitalis, right?
Yeah, many of our medicines are derived from plants. The aspirin has its root in willow bark. So
its root.
Huh?
I see what you did there.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it turns out that those cardiac glycosides, those are used. Digitalis that comes from foxglove plants like lily of the valley, is used for heart failure. It's an old-fashioned medicine used for heart failure. And what it does is it relaxes the tension within the walls of the arteries so that the blood pressure in the body against which the heart is getting blood pumped out to the body, less resistance, easier flow. Heart doesn't have to work hard. So if you have a weak heart, you don't want it to have to be pushing against a tight arterial tree. So it relaxes it. Also, it just gives a little more oomph to each beat of the heart. So it has a couple of different things. But, of course, in excess, digitalis toxicity. But we're talking 20, 30, 40 times the normal maintenance dose can be deadly.
Is this a plant that you can just go pick up from your local florist shop?
I'm not a naturalist. I don't know if you can take a walk in the Nature Valley area here and find,
Well, we had a call, and I encourage people, KWS.com, 939theeagle.com, and type in Sarah Sheffer's name, and you can read the court documents. They are very graphic. But to Stephanie's point, I had a call from a listener that when I first reported this Lily of the Valley, and he thinks she got the idea. Now, I don't know how he knows this. Maybe he knows her. He said that there's a show called, and I don't know what it is. It's Breaking Bad. There's somebody named Walter White. Is that somebody?
It's Breaking Bad's a very popular show.
I don't know the show, but
the meth cooker.
Okay, so this Walter White apparently in episodes would give people this Lily of the Valley, and they would die, is what the guy said. And again, I don't know. I haven't seen the show. But the amazing thing about the court documents about her, by the way, if John knows this is a very prominent teacher in Jefferson City. The News Tribune ran a front page story when they hired her. She has artwork displayed all over the country. And her career is, she's jailed without bond right now. And the court document is deeply troubling in that there are 8 incidents. Then they have her on videotape allegedly doing this. He says she was poisoned in his blender. Her argument to him was that she urinated in his drink. She was not poisoning if she urinated. That's what she said in the court document. And also there's references to Pakistan in the court document. She allegedly, according to the court document I read, I posted on the website, she's in a relationship with someone who lives in Pakistan. They searched her computer. She was
allegedly.
Well, again,
I can see the movie now.
This is you
want to write the screenplay, Brian?
Well,
or John, you entered Stephanie.
I can see, to Stephanie's point, I can see like a 2020 or a Dateline coming in. This and he is. I don't know the husband's condition. He didn't die because it's attempted murder. They do have children, so I want to really ask people to be
Lily of the Valley
leave the kids out of it.
It's native to Europe, and apparently it's an invasive species and can be found in Missouri.
The guy that got arrested out of the radio station was accused of poisoning his wife, right?
That was James Cowan,
Jeff City.
Jeff City, and he was arrested
with antifreeze.
And that was
the charge.
Yeah, Dateline. He was arrested literally as he was coming off of actually, they arrested him while he was doing his morning talk show across from the Hardys in Jefferson City. His name was James Cowan. Huge name, talk show host, used to work in Chicago. Claimed he went to Harvard. I'm not sure, John, if he actually did. Claimed he worked at ESPN. But
can't make this stuff up.
No, and it made national news, and he was walked out. Not walked out. Stephanie Boltz, you guys know Stephanie Boltz up front. They came in, the Boston police, and said, "We want to go downstairs." And she said, she didn't identify themselves. And she said, "You can't go in." And basically, they pushed her aside and went down to go arrest the guy. I thought they could have been a little bit more professional.
And just by a fate of luck, instead of pulling him off the air with his mic open in the middle of a sentence, he was in a commercial break.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And Dean Morgan had to fill in. He said, "Dean, I'll be back." Well, he's never been back on the air.
Was convicted of poisoning his wife's Mountain Dew with antifreeze
With ethylene
in
glycol.
Boston. Yeah, it was in Boston. Exactly. It was a terror. So there are some similarities there, but that was
well, back to this plant thing. I'm shocked at how many plants are actually that you wouldn't know that are poisonous. I remember Chris and I early in our relationship had purchased a couple plants, and then we looked them up to try to figure out how to care for them. And at the top it was highly poisonous to pets and children. And we didn't have any children at the time, but I thought, why didn't this say it on the tag when we bought it that we're bringing? And I know, isn't it poinsettias are pretty poisonous?
Poinsettias.
Yeah, dogs.
Mother-in-law tongue.
Yeah, that's what it was, John. I was trying to remember. It was mother-in-law's tongue, I think.
Is that sort of that thick-leafed plant that's variegated leaves?
Yeah.
Colored.
And again, they don't go into a lot of detail in the probable cause statement where she got the plant or any of that. They really don't, but they do. They mention what he experienced. And it's very graphic. I'm not going to get into it. What happened to his body? It's very graphic.
Oh, yeah.
It is
Is
just.
he okay?
I don't know.
It's awful.
I really don't. And since I don't have a name, and they can't say, but it's fair to say he had fatigue, blurred vision, nausea, and I'll just keep it at that.
Yeah.
But it was 8 instances. It
activates what's called the parasympathetic system. So the sympathetic system is your flight and fight. That's when everything tightens up and your eyeballs dilate and you're ready to, Well, the opposite happens when you have digitalis toxicity. So yeah,
it's awful,
and that includes activating your bowels. Let's just not say anything more than that.
And they reference a little bit of that.
Yeah,
in the court
kaopectate
documents.
and Pepto-Bismol won't cut the mustard in that case.
And it's just it's horrible.
No pun intended,
so to speak.
Yeah, but she is jailed without bond.
Yeah.
And if something were to happen to him, that charge will be upgraded. It is not, and we pray for him.
It takes so much creativity and energy and thought to do this. Why, if people were to direct these sinister efforts in positive ways, what a difference they could make. Assuming that this is true, right? These are allegations.
And I always say allegedly. I know people tease me about that, but the reason I do that is because she has not been convicted, and I'm not going to get myself sued for slander, so I always say allegedly. Right. But the court documents or prosecutors say I'm big on attribution, but the charges are very, very troubling. Yeah. And the fact that the court, it's Judge Brian Stumphy who said this, he described her as a danger to the community. Well, he has ordered her jailed without bond. That's significant when you have a judge that's flat out in the court order.
Does it say what tipped the husband off to start recording her by video? Because he got it on video. Yeah,
he did. It mentioned his. I'll spare the details. The graphic things that were happening to his body, and he confronted her. She said she urinated. It was urinating in his drinks. I mean, I know it's disgusting, but that's what she said.
And then she said she'd mixed industrial adhesive or something into his drink when he confronted her, and all.
And that was not the case either. But maybe she did urinate in it. I don't know. But
maybe she watches too much TV. That industrial stuff was on an episode of Law and Order, I think.
I think so too. My mom. I think that's right. But yeah,
he got Callan case. I mean, they subpoenaed his laptop and all, and found some very telling things that he'd looked up.
Yeah,
about poisoning.
Is there any explanation? Had he allegedly done anything to provoke this kind of a response? A woman scorned, et cetera, et cetera.
She wasn't scorned. She had a boyfriend in Pakistan.
Yeah, and there's nothing to
allegedly.
Exactly. There's nothing that
other than she had something going on allegedly.
Two very short paragraphs, because I think this really tells the story. It's going to be a little graphic, folks, but we need to hear this because it answers all of your questions here. So bear with me. Quote, this is straight from the court document, Jefferson City PD probable cause statement. Quote, the victim stated on 12/31/2023 the defendant provided him a beverage he described as having a bitter taste. Shortly afterwards, he experienced the above-mentioned symptoms, and it mentions the stuff I talked about, including severe cottonmouth. Quote, the symptoms continued through the following day, 1/1/2024. On 1/1/2024, the defendant brought the victim a beverage. The victim stated the beverage had a bitter taste. The victim advised he confronted the defendant regarding her putting something into the beverage, and the defendant stated she urinated in it. The defendant then admitted to putting an industrial-strength adhesive in it. The victim stated the defendant later denied putting anything in the beverage. The victim installed a concealed camera that captured the kitchen area of their residence. The victim stated, it goes on about Lily of the Valley. That's signed, by the way, under oath, under the penalty of perjury by the JCPD. So graphic. I encourage people to read the court documents, KWS.com and 939theeagle.com. But he had a feeling something was going on, and her basically saying she urinated in the industrial adhesive. There's no indication she did that. I don't know about the other thing.
Does it mention how much life insurance he has? Because that's always my concern too. And like whenever my advisor calls me, is like, I think you need more life insurance. I'm like, look, I want enough life insurance to make sure everyone's cool, but not enough life insurance to get murdered.
They don't say anything about life insurance in there. They do not. It's not mentioned at all.
To the Callan case.
It mentioned Pakistan, and it mentions as well they actually talked to people at the National Capital Poison Center, doctor, and Lily of the Valley is characterized as having major toxicity. Yeah. It's cardiac glycosides.
Cardiac glycosides.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an extract that becomes digitalis.
I'll spare the specific details, but it mentions nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. But this guy was suffering.
It's terrible. It's awful. And it can be deadly. I mean, that's why people on digitalis, when they come in and they're confused or comatose or semi-comatose, the first thing you do is grab a dig level, right? You want to know what's going on. But there are increasingly different medicines. That's not commonly used very much anymore, as much as it was. All right, so there you go. We're going to have to follow this story.
We will.
And as it develops, I know you will be on top of it. John Marsh will be on top of it. We will, of course, relay that to the audience, who is, as I am, fascinated by these stories. I can't believe it. No wonder these true crime stories are so popular on the Netflix and everything else. Huh?
Yeah, Hannah is waiting for the podcast to come out.
All right.
It will.
Hannah will be on top of it. When we come back, leftovers, there's lots on my plate.
I-70 on, is it Aikman Bridge in O'Neill? Somebody's up there, and they said just super slick. I heard in Ashland, same thing. I know I've been giving them grief about closing, but my friends who live, out a ways say the gravel roads are just awful.
Terrible. Wonder how long that's going to take for that. I mean, the temperatures are going to moderate here
today,
in the next few days.
Oh,
so
yeah. No,
should
today.
be better.
What's the high today?
Yeah, but you got an ice pack there. I mean, you have an ice pack. I was on it up in the Macon area Sunday, and I mean, it's we've had that melt cycle, and then of course the freeze yesterday. So today, high is supposed to be 44.
That should melt it, right?
And for the next few days, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of rain.
But remember, frozen ground can act as a sink, a cool sink for quite a while.
Fair.
So I don't know. I was surprised this morning. I got out of the truck on what led to 2 accidents in the parking lot yesterday here at the studio. People just got down there and gently slid down.
Just enough of an incline to...
And I started bopping across the road, and I'm, whoa, wait a minute, it's slick.
Yeah, it's almost more dangerous today because it looks like you're going to be safe, and you're liable to catch an unsuspecting patch of ice. So you got to be careful.
Hey, I want to.
we got a text from John 874-9390. Said anything that wasn't cleared and is especially shaded is slick AF.
True. Unless you have a big A truck. Okay, here we go.
Gosh.
All right. Newt Gingrich on the Fox channel the other day relates a story that I think we were talking a little bit about national politics. Of course, tomorrow we'll be unpacking what happens in New Hampshire today. Is it the last stand for Nikki Haley? Is it not? We'll have to see. But we were talking about the electorate and what are going to be the issues. I mean, if the economy is actually looking pretty good going into the general, if the border is tightened, we've seen that happen in the last 3 weeks, will some of the voters who otherwise would be like, Trump, well, maybe not so. I don't know. I'm sort of okay with where we're at now. And Stephanie, you made the case that, hey, people are mad as hornets over what they've done to Donald Trump. Here was Newt's story about one such voter.
Just pisses people off. I mean, I had a woman today, literally, Cliff and I were at Giant doing some grocery shopping, and a woman came up to me, African-American, works at the store. She said, I'm not quite sure I'm for Trump, but I hate what they're doing to him. And I think it's really unfair, and it really bothers me. And I think that's true of almost every American.
So will that, in fact, float to an issue that many people may say, hey, I know how I feel about abortion. I know how I feel about the borders. But, above all, I don't want the DOJ weaponized against me like they did against Trump.
So it's a pity vote?
I don't know.
I think people have seen it in their personal lives. I think we've all seen the government put the hammer on someone, be it your local government, your state government, or the federal government, and thought, what they're doing to my friend, my family member, this person that I know at work is wrong. And I think seeing it at a national level, I think people really, it resonates with people. So I think if Trump can stay off of the, past and focus on, and that's kind of related to the past, but off of the stolen election stuff and focus on that, I think it puts him in a really good spot. I think we also saw new polling out today that right now, actually the border is eclipsing the economy as folks' number one issue. And Trump is really strong on the border. And especially with that decision out of the Supreme Court yesterday, I think if he focuses on weaponization of the federal government and on border, he has a path.
For the last 3 weeks, the border's been pretty quiet. They've tightened things up because they had a meeting down in Mexico.
You just had to go and say the Q word, didn't you?
What Q word?
It's a jinx.
It's a jinx.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Come on. Hasn't a first responder ever told you that?
Oh, no, I don't believe in jinxes. I'm not superstitious. I just think that they may take some of these premier, headline marquee GOP issues because they can manipulate things. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll talk about New Hampshire tomorrow as we unpack what went